I was wrong. When the patch hit last week, I moved Nami, Varus, and Sylas comps all the way down to the B tier, but I was surprised and moved them back up to where they belong, and I think you guys will actually find a few more surprises in this meta snapshot. So just as a summary, in the S tier, Xayah Ragewing or Xayah Guild, both very good options. I think that is the best comp right now if you consider both strength and reliability. Following up to that, Olaf Reroll. Assassin Olaf is probably the strongest thing you could ever play right now in the mid to late game, and then this is where the surprise comes in. I actually think Shapeshifter Nidalee is one of the best comps if you want to climb really quickly. We'll get into why when we explain how to play the comp, and along with that, we'll be going over how to play and how to level, what items to build, what champions to play for every single one of these comps. So let's move on to the A tier. Bruiser Varus. Very solid comp, very consistent because of the Astral Reroll. Dragonmancer Lee Sin. Another surprise up here. There are a lot of 1v9 Lee Sin builds out there right now. Bruiser Sy'fen, I feel like this is one of the more underrated comps. Dragons, very solid overall. Fast 9ing with AO Shin, we already know that's great. It's just hard to get in most games. Mirage Daeja, very solid comp. Kind of like the KO builds of the past if you guys played before. Mage Nami, moved it up to A tier. Very solid, especially with Luden's Echo. I'd even argue with Luden's Echo, it might even be S tier. You just can't get it every time. Diana Reroll, very solid. Ezreal Reroll, very strong reroll comp. And then Sett Ragewing. You guys might be thinking Sett Ragewing is a little low right now, but I think that's mainly because it is more difficult to pull off than the other ones right now. In the B tier, Cannoneer Corki. I feel like Corki's underwhelming compared to Xayah, but if you get Corki for free, very solid champ to play right now. Whispers, this is with reroll Elise. There are better things to go for. Yone Reroll, Kayn Reroll, same story. There are better things to go for. Jade Flex, this is with Xiao and then using a random carry. Solid, but not as good as Xayah. So if you're ever going 4 costs, there are better options. If you're going reroll, there are better options. Guild Talon, same story there, and Guild Ryze at the very end there. In the C tier, we have some comps. Revel Cannoneer, don't play. Legend Volibear, don't play. There's some funny names for the Ornn comp, don't play. Qiyana, Swain Reroll, Swiftshot Twitch, Karma Reroll. I would avoid these. And then we have the other category, Double Trouble. You could combine this with a lot of comps you see up here. For example, you could do Double Trouble with Bruiser Varus. I have a video on that from before. Olaf works really well with it. There are a lot of things you could do with Double Trouble. And then Built Different. This one, it really depends on which Built Different you have and how hard you commit to it. It's really augment dependent. So I'm going to leave that uncategorized for now. Maybe I show something in the future for that. But let's get right into the compositions. If you guys like what you're seeing so far, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. I update this tier list every single Friday, as I've been doing for the past 2 to 3 years. So first things first, Xayah Ragewing or Guild Xayah. Both very powerful. So first version is with 6 Ragewing. What you do is you use a Jade transition. So instead of playing Shyvana, because Shyvana is a legendary, you play Xiao instead. You run 6 Jade with 3 Ragewing, buffing up your Xayah. And then once you get Shyvana, you swap out the Xiao into Shyvana. You get 6 Ragewing, huge power spike there. Very well-rounded comp, uses a lot of strong tank units with Hecarim and Neeko as well. And then you get some support with Soraka and Ashe. The guild version is a little bit different. Instead of maxing out on Ragewings, you add in guild units instead. What guild does, it adds a little buff to the rest of your team. So Sejuani gives you some bonus health, Talon gives you some attack damage, and Twitch gives you some attack speed. All very good stats for Xayah. That's pretty much all she needs. And you also get to run cringe Frozen Heart builds. Frozen Heart on an assassin is so good because they jump to the backline right next to their carry, slows down their attack speed if they do not have a Quicksilver, and it's just 30% less damage from the enemy team. AoE, by the way. Hecarim's going to be the main tank, I've seen Sunfire do well, Warmogs, Stoneplate, Morello works as well. I also like to put 1 tank item on Ornn so that it ensures that he gets his cast off. And then Shen, sometimes you could put Redemption on Shen because he hits a lot of your units, it's pretty good. And then all your leftover items, you know how there are some games where you get too many damage items, you get like 5 damage items? Well, the great thing about this comp is that you could put the leftovers on Talon. Talon uses them really well, and he doesn't need many synergies to shine. 2 Assassin, 3 Guild, that is perfectly fine enough for Talon. Also, you get Tempest here with the Qiyana, and Qiyana also provides a lot of CC, so this comp is just very robust. It has pretty much everything you can ask for. The item holder for this build is Ezreal and Twitch or any frontliner, and any frontliner for the tank items, and then you do standard leveling. So I did update the leveling guide. So if you go all the way to the top of my website, you just click this little thing over here and you get to see the new thing for that. I'll also try to leave a link to the video on the top right. Let's get back to Xayah. The core units really are Xayah, Hecarim, and Shen, and 2 Swiftshot. So again, they share all of these units. So you could just switch between the Ragewing build or the guild build, depending on what you're getting that game. On to the next build, we have Olaf Reroll. So again, Assassin Spatula on Olaf is probably the most broken thing I've ever seen in my entire life, because he just jumps to your backline and kills everything. Unfortunately, we can't reliably get spatula items, so it doesn't happen all the time. But if you do get it, it is like S+ tier, beyond S+ tier. It's S++. Regular Olaf without Assassin Spatula is still S tier, but maybe like between S and S-. Still really solid overall, but the off chance you get the Assassin Spatula, it just skyrockets this team so much. You could also run Diana as a secondary carry. So whenever I do carry Olaf, I like doing a more supporty Diana. That's why I put the Frozen Heart on her. And we'll get into a Diana build later on if you want to do like a primary Diana carry. The builds you could do on this is either 4 Scale Scorn or 4 Warrior. I tend to like the Scale Scorn a little more because I feel like the effect is just so good. You take reduced damage from really strong units, and you deal bonus magic damage. And I also have like sample gameplays here on my website for some of these comps if you guys want to check that out on bunnymuffins.lol/meta. But what you like to do for this comp is reroll for Diana and Olaf 3-star at level 7. And those are going to be the main big guys. I like running 4 Scale Scorn with this. It just complements both of them so well. Items for Olaf, Quicksilver is really good. Rage Blade, RFC, Runon's Hand of Justice, Deathblade, Titan's Resolve. All very solid items. Doesn't really matter which one you get. I do think Quicksilver or RFC might be required, but I have seen Olaf's work without them. Now, one important thing. If you do manage to luck out and get the Assassin Spatula, the items change a little bit. You want Infinity Edge as your second item, and then you want either RFC or just more damage with like a Deathblade. You don't need stacking items such as Rage Blade or Titan's Resolve because he's going to be one-tapping things so quickly in the backline that you don't need that stacking potential in the later parts of the fight. Items for Diana, Frozen Heart the most important one, Infinity Edge is good, Ionic Spark, like just the typical Diana items over here. Don't worry too much about her, focus on the Olaf. The augments for this that are really good are Triforce, Titanic Strength because Olaf is a Titanic person, is a bruiser, Celestial Blessing, Wise Spending, Second Wind, and also Tiamat is incredible as well. The counter to this build is using like a big tank. A lot of times your Olaf can get stuck on there, and then Diana sometimes doesn't kill that much stuff in the back because she doesn't have the perfect items for killing things. And then eventually their Xayah just starts to target your Olaf, and then he will eventually die. Like, yeah, sometimes Olaf gets stuck on an Itis or something like that, and life just happens that way. The next build up we have is the Nidalee Reroll Shapeshifter. So let me explain why I think this is S tier. So Nidalee is kind of more like a middly. It's not that great, but it is so consistent, and that is why it is pushed up to the S tier. You're not going to win a lot of games with Nidalee Reroll. Don't get me wrong, it has one of the lowest win rates out of all the top comps right now. Lucky for you, you don't need to win games to climb in TFT. If you get second and third a ton of times, you're going to be climbing super fast, and you pretty much always hit Nidalee 3-star at stage 3-1. The reason why is because you have Astrals in. If you have Astrals, you just get a lot of free Nidalees in your shop, and yeah, you just hyper roll it on 3-1. You always hit Nidalee 3. If you don't, it's like one of the unluckiest things that can ever happen. Go buy a lotto ticket because maybe it like cancels out, you know? But that is why it is so high tier. So when a lot of pros play this, they get something like 4th place all the time. But really, once you get Nidalee 3, imagine if you're not facing other pro players, you're going to be getting a ton of thirds and a ton of seconds instead of just getting like a 4th place. So the average placement of this comp mixed with the consistency of it makes it S tier. So what you want to do, you want at least like 4 shapeshifters. We have 6 in this picture here, but you don't have to run 6. It's just really good once you get the Shyvana. That's really your win condition. And then, yeah, The only requirements is you need early Astrals. If you don't have Astrals by stage 3-1, like you can't really roll for Nidalee because like the whole benefit of the consistency just isn't there. So if you don't have that, like don't play the comp, go into something else. But you just hyper roll for Nidalee at stage 3-1, and we go over the hyper rolling stuff in our leveling guide. So go to that video if you want to learn more about that. Items for Nidalee are pretty important, but she uses so many things. Rageblade I think is the best item. A lot of people like Quicksilver, but I don't think it's actually that required. It is very good, but don't stress too much on that. I think Rageblade is just the one that's the most important. Deathblade really good after that. Titans extremely good. Giant Slayer, Bloodthirster, Infinity Edge, Hodge, Runon's RFC, and Static Shiv even works. But here's the thing. All of these items, even though I like some more than the others, you can build any of these items on Nidalee. You just need to slam items as quickly as possible to preserve HP because you're playing for a top 4. Whenever you're doing that, you just don't care about perfect items because you're just trying to knock other people out of the game before they hit their late game. So it's a bit of a different play style if you're not used to it, but I definitely recommend trying it out. Just slam items, any of these will do, and just go from there. Augments that are really good for this build is Ascension is the best one. You live so long with your Shapeshifters that you pretty much always get to the Ascension part. Electrocharge is really good because you run a bunch of tanks. Look at this. You get like Warmogs on Shyvana or Nico with the Shapeshifter buff. You're not going to be dying for a while. Beast Den is a Shapeshifter augment, so obviously you take that. Weak Spot's really good for reducing healing. Second Wind, whenever you have big tanks, this is good. Portable Forge is great because you're mainly focused on getting good Nidalee items or good Shyvana items. And almost any Portable Forge, like 3 options from them, are going to be really good for you. Same story with Radiant Relics, and then Verdant Veil allows you to skip the QSS and go into something else and get more damage. Onto the next build, we have the A tiers, Varus Bruisers. Astral comps, man, yeah, they're just way too consistent, you know? This one is pretty easy to play though. You just reroll at level 7 for Varus 3-star and Alawi 3-star. Alawi main tank, Varus main damage, and they're both Astral units, so you can roll for both of them at the same time. And if there are other Nami players taking Nidalee and Nami out of the pool, you hit Alawi and Varus even faster. So this really works if there are other Astral players playing non-Varus in your games, because they just literally build off of each other, which is kind of funny if you think about it. Normally in reroll comps, you have to roll the same cost unit in order to build off of each other, but in this one, since they're Astrals, it works a little differently. Item holders I like for this build are Ezreal and Skarner. Skarner you don't really care about. Even if he's 3-star, you eventually replace him with a different Bruiser. Sometimes if you get a Sy'fen 2, you can run him and run 2 Swiftshot instead of 4. All really good stuff. Sy'fen's especially good if you get a ton of items such as from like Portable Forge or Radiant Relics, things like that. But yeah, to play this comp, you reroll at level 7 for Varus 3. Items for Alawi, any tank items will do. Warmogs is good, Titans, Bramble, Declub, like the usual suspects, you know. Items for Varus, Deathblade is extremely good, Rageblade extremely good, and Runon's extremely good. But if you get a Giant Slayer, Hodge, or any other attack damage or attack speed item, you're not really mad about it. In this set right now, I wouldn't stress too much about best in slot items. As long as you have 2 really good items, I'd say you're fine. You don't need 3 exact items for any carry right now. The best augment for this comp is Press the Attack for obvious reasons. It's just the best Swiftshot one. Actually, when you get this, you could go for stuff like Zeke's Herald and buff up all your Swiftshot units instead of just focusing on one guy. Second Wind really good because you're running Bruisers. Weak Spot really good. Best Friend, Trade Sector, Makeshift Armor I should add here as well. But that's pretty much the basics of this comp. Next up we have Sin Dragonmancer. I added this comp in recently, and Sin is an incredible unit. He's also so weird. I see so many different item combinations on him. I don't think there's a single champ in the game right now that's good that uses as many different item combos as Sin does right now. So I've seen full tank Sins, I've seen full damage Sins, I've seen mixing and matching, but I think the best combination right now is 1 healing item, 1 damage item, and 1 tank item. So here we have a Redemption, that's your healing item, Stoneplate, your tank item, and Archangel's your damage item, but we're gonna scroll down a bit. Like, I don't even think I list every item that he could use. Hand of Justice, healing, Jeweled Gauntlet, IE, both damage items, Titans, that's pretty much everything. Bloodthirster, healing, Sunfired, Tank, Stoneplate tank, Ionic, tank and damage, Gunblade, healing, Redemption healing, Bramble tank, Archangel's damage, Dragonclaw, tank and healing. A lot of things can work on Lee Sin. And yeah, you obviously put the Dragonmancer on Lee Sin. You're running 6 Dragonmancer, and he's going to be the main guy. He essentially is just like a 1v9 build. If you do happen to get Yasuo, great, because Yasuo can definitely help a ton. But yeah, the best tank for this build is Neeko. But really, like, Lee Sin's your main tank. So Neeko's just there if you hit it and for fun. But Lee Sin is pretty much the only unit that matters. Really fun build. You do a reroll for Lee Sin 3-star at level 7. And you could also pick up Volibear and Swain because they're both 3-cost units on your way there. But you're really only caring about Lee Sin. The core of this build is 6 Dragonmancer. You really need to get that threshold. And you could use this with spatula items as well. This is super important because, again, the only unit we care about is Lee Sin. Augments, Eye of the Storm is obviously the best one. Triforce, really good. It buffs up Lee Sin. Second Wind, incredible for him. Celestial, it takes care of the healing portion that we were talking about. Wise Spending, good for reroll. Blue Battery, great because it allows him to cast more. Portable Forge, pretty decent as well because you only care about one guy. Same with Radiant Relics. The counter to this is really high single target damage and like a Giant Slayer. So if you have a range carry that just stacks up Rageblade stacks, it could potentially kill the Lee Sin. Having multiple tanks is also useful against Lee Sin because if you only have one primary guy, he can kick him away and then his team starts focusing your weak guys, and that could be very troublesome. Bruiser, Olaf, and Sy'fen. Alright, so this is like the beefy boy build. You go 6 Bruiser. I've tried 8 Bruiser once, but it's too much. You just need 6 of them. Olaf and Sy'fen main carry. You could reroll at level 7 for this. And the great part of rerolling at level 7 is that it's really easy to hit Sy'fen 2-star if you're rolling that much gold. And obviously you're going for Olaf 3 as well. So the core of this is Olaf, Shen, and 4 Bruiser, and you put like Olaf and Sy'fen, they share a lot of the same items. Like they could pretty much use the same thing. Like if you get 2 Titans Resolves, you could put one on Olaf, one on Sy'fen. They both like Bloodthirster. That's just really solid build overall. This build can turn into an S tier build if you get Titanic Strength, because this just is like the biggest steroid for bruisers in the world. Big Friend, pretty solid. Second Wind, great for bruisers in general. And then Wise Spending, whenever you're doing 3-cost reroll, it's going to be a good augment. On to the next build, we have Dragon, Alliance, and Horde. So there are a lot of different ways to play this build. Some people like running 3 dragons. I think that is like one of the better versions right now. And you just run stuff that fills in random synergies that you have left over. So some people, if you're running like Idis and Daeja, you have 1 out of 2 Guardian and 3 out of 4 Mirage. Leona gives both Mirage and Guardian, which is a nice thing to add. If you're running Xiaoyu, you like adding things such as Lulu or Bard. If you're running Sy'fen, you can add in 1 Bruiser and maybe 1 Whisper, such as Sylas. And then if you're running Shyvana, she likes having a Shapeshifter, so add in a Neeko. It really depends on what you're running, so you just fill in the spots depending on what you need. Aoshin, you grab an Ornn. Keep in mind, all types of Dragon 2-stars work, but I feel like the most important one when you're trying to stabilize at level 7 and level 8 is Idis and 1 damage dealer. Idis is by far the tankiest dragon. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Unfortunately, that's the only thing Idis does. It's just a tank, so you need a big damage dealer. I like Daeja the most, but second choice would be Sy'fen. Some people like Sy'fen more, but you know, it's a personal preference. Some people like vanilla ice cream, some people like cookies and cream, you know? What I like about this build is that it's really easy to play. So once you ever get Dragon Alliance or Dragon Horde, you don't really see like your team going anywhere based on the board you have right now. You just take one of these 2 options and then you just click the big shiny units in your shop. Really fun to do. But yeah, you do not force this comp, you're just doing standard leveling, and then once you hit the augment on like stage 3 or something like that, you could potentially pivot to this comp. I like rolling at level 7 a bunch because a lot of times you need to stabilize, because 3 1-star dragons sometimes doesn't cut it, so you need like the 2 stars in order to really stabilize. If not, you could go 8 and roll there, and it's a lot easier to hit the 2 stars, but you have to wait longer, so you sacrifice more life points. And again, don't stress about specific dragons, just play whoever you can 2-star, and ideally, you have at least 1 tank dragon and 1 DPS dragon. Also, the legendary dragons, like Aoshin and Aurelion Soul, they're risky to take. I would much prefer having a 2-star Daeja than a 1-star Aoshin when I'm playing this build, or like a 1-star Aurelion Soul. because it's just so much easier to 2-star. It's much more consistent. Get the legendaries later on into the game. Next up, we have Shin Tempest. This is the fast 9 build. So it's essentially just Shin and a bunch of supporting casts and a lot of tanks. The tanks are really important. Look here, we only have like 5 units in right now, so the other 2 units, they need to be tanks. It could be Nico 2-star, Hecarim 2-star, any of the usual suspects of like strong tank items in the game right now, and then supporting synergies as well. So if you're running Hecarim 2, maybe run a Nunu 2 to give him Cavalier. And the way you want to play this build is fast 9. So fast 9 is standard leveling, and then you try to go 9 as soon as possible, and then just click all the big shiny units in your shop. Shin is the most used right now, and this is the comp we're seeing in this picture here. And then Ornn for more Tempest. You can add in a Bruiser to buff up Ornn and give you more tankiness. There's really not much else to say here. Soraka's really good as well because it heals your life total. So there are a lot of different options you can kind of play. All the good augments are like high-end shopping, level up. I think I should add late game specialist here. Meditation is good because it buffs up like all your CC units in the back. And then Stand United, also pretty good because you're going to be running a lot of different synergies because a lot of legendaries just have like their own traits. Now onto Mirage Daeja. So depending on the Mirage, you want to do a different build. Some favor tanks more, some favor damage dealers more, some favor melee damage dealers, some favor the range ones. You have to pay attention to the Mirage one. Also, the Pirate one, it's actually not that bad. You just power level with the extra gold, but it is a little risky. I played a ton of Mirage Daeja, and yeah, super fun build to do. Yasuo's a great bomb in the late game to really finish people off. And yeah, it's pretty much like a Kayle build. Daeja is essentially Kayle from the past. So if you like that type of playstyle, this is a comp for you. Items, Nunu likes like all the tank items, Daeja, all the attack speed items and AP items. And then yeah, the Mirage variant doesn't really change the build, it just changes who you carry. So if you get like a great Yone one, such as Electric Overload, for example, and you get a Rage Blade on him, it's really good. Electric Overload also works really well with your tanks. Spell Sword, really good on Daeja. Dawnbringer, great for Nunu. Duelist, great for Daeja or Yone. Same for Executioners. Warlord's good for, I think, all of them. And then, yeah, Pirate's Greed, you just kind of level up with that one. And then for augments, any Cavalier Crest is absolutely insane. It just bumps up the tankiness so much. You could put it on Leona. She's not in the picture here, but you could add her, and she, yeah, like Cavalier Crest. You could be. It doesn't have to be Leona. It could be anyone really, and they just like, yeah. Eventually, you want it on Yasuo, but it doesn't always reach that point in the game. Mages, Nami or Ryze carry. Nami's probably the better one. You could also do a more power level build where you don't really reroll for Nami and go for the late game with Zoe. Because Zoe is probably one of the best support units in the game right now with the Mage buff activated. Because she casts twice, she could give invulnerability to like half your team, or she could do a big Lux Bomb, she could add in another tank, or she CCs the entire board with the Janet Tornadoes. Just like a very OP unit with the Mage buff because she just casts twice and all her abilities are super good. But yeah, Astrals by 3-2 is nice to have if you want to reroll for Nami. Spear Shojin, Luden's Echo, as I said before, makes this comp S tier. And yeah, like not really too much else to say. If you guys want to like get the full guide on this build, click on the gameplay video over here. I pretty much did a in-depth guide back then for this comp. You could also do Ryze carry, which is pretty fun. Spear Shojin, Archangels, and AP items and healing items are really good on him. Do not sleep on him as like a mage carry. For augments, Intercosmic Gifts is nice if you get it super early. Mage augments are super good. Luden's Echo we already talked about. Cybernetic Uplink is pretty good. This one gives mana. Meditation gives your team so much casting. And yeah, you want to run Heimerdinger if you do get Meditation because he ends up stunning everyone with that. It's like one of the most broken things. Heimerdinger is actually one of the best late game units. Like, you guys can quote me on that. Especially with Meditation, because he just stuns the highest percent health person. Oftentimes that's the enemy's carry because they have a healing item on them. So they're always going to be full health, and then you just perma-stun them. It's completely nonsense. I don't care that he's a one-cost unit. He's one of the best late-game units. The counter to this build is high burst damage, so you don't allow Nami to keep healing whoever is taking damage. Anti-healing is also nice, and backline access such as Assassins destroys this comp. Now onto Yone Reroll. This is very similar to the Olaf build. It just revolves around more Diana full carry instead of Olaf. But if you do get Assassin Spat Olaf, refer to the previous build from the very start. But yeah, no Frozen Heart on Diana. That goes on Qiyana instead this time. And then you just put Ionic Spark, IE, Titans are really good. A healing item is also decent, such as Gunblade or Hand of Justice. Talon is a great secondary carry. Talon, he's just, you guys know I love Talon. He just works so well without investing too much in him. It's only when you invest a lot in him where it doesn't really pay off that much. But if you just put a little bit in him, he's a great secondary carry. But yeah, we have the list of the items down here, and like reroll at level 7 for Diana 3-star obviously, and then the core units, Diana 4 scale scorn to Assassin, and then augments, it's a usual suspect for 3-cost reroll. Onto the next build, we have Ezreal reroll. This one you reroll at level 5 for Ezreal 3, Leona, Taric, and Karma as well. And very, very, very solid build. This build wins a lot of games, more than it should for a 1-cost reroll, because when we think of the other 1-cost rerolls, such as Sett Reroll, which we'll get into later, that comp runs Shyvana in the late game. So Shyvana's your late game bomb. But this comp, you don't need that big bomb in the late game, which is kind of nuts to me. But yeah, if you ever get like 5 Ezreals to start the game with, or like 4, it's worth looking into because it's really easy to play because it's a reroll build. And if you hit, you are going to be chilling. Oh yeah, Blue Battery, probably the best augment in the game for this comp because it just gives Ezreal tons of casts. Onto the Sett build, we have, oh yeah, I didn't realize it was the next one. Reroll Sett is really good right now. However, I will say this comp is better the higher you go up. If you're like lower elo right now, I wouldn't really recommend playing the Sett build unless you're uncontested and you get a lot of sets at the start, because it is a little more difficult to play because you really have to know when to all in and when to power level up to get Shyvana. It's not as like face rolly as some of the reroll builds of the past where you literally just press D the whole time and then your comp is set for good. You need to actually reach the 9 Ragewing in the late game in order to really win a lot of games. If you compare this to Nidalee Reroll is so easy to play, and that's why like their placements are a little bit shifted on this tier list. But yeah, you just reroll for Sett at level 5 and then power level, get Shyvana. 6 or 9 Ragewing is fine. You can only really get 9 if you do get the Shyvana. You don't always get her. Items for Sett, and Sett does need pretty specific items. Quicksilver, almost mandatory. Rageblade, incredibly good. And then Titans or Deathblade, they're both solid. Third item probably doesn't matter as much. Featherweights is incredibly good for this build because you really only care about Sett. So Featherweights just makes the most sense for him. Scourge, insane. Weak spot, pretty good for reducing healing because he takes a long time to ramp up his Rageblade. And then Best Friends, it gives him more attack speed. Anything that gives him more attack speed is going to be good. Countering this comp is actually pretty easy. If you have any high single target damage dealer, they can often kill Sett because he doesn't always have his healing up. His healing is only up when he has his Ragewing bar going down. So a lot of times you could kill him before he actually sustains back. Contrast that with other carries that run Bloodthirster, they are constantly healing, so it's a little different there. Onto the B tier, Corki Cannoneer. Corki, he is good. He is good. I do like him, but compared to Xayah, it's just not even a competition. That's why he's in the B tier instead of like A or S. Idis, great frontline tank, probably one of the best tank units in the game, if not the best. But unfortunately, that's all Idis does. Literally does no damage. That's why I like having like an Ionic Spark on Idis, or maybe like a Sunfire Cave, so that he does like something while he's living for like 10 million years. But yeah, Corki carry, add some Cannoneers, add some Revel, and you're chilling there. Lulu Sona, pretty much a staple in most comps nowadays. Standard leveling for this. Next build, we have Sy'fen, Elise Whispers. This is reroll Elise. And I'm going to be going over the B tier comps like a little faster right now because there's so many other good A and S tier comps that like, if you really do want to play these, just head on over to the website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta, to get like the scoop on this. But yeah, just reroll at level 7 for Elise 3-star. And yeah, Sy'fen's a great carry as well, just because he does Sy'fen things. Yone Reroll Guardians. This is probably one of my... dude, if you guys caught my stream on twitch.tv/bunnymuffinslol, you would have seen me raging so hard because I've been trying to go this comp for so many times and it's always failed. But it's not because the comp's bad. I start my game during stage 2 with 5 Yones or something like that, and then I reroll it, and then I just don't see any Yones in any of my shops uncontested. It's happened to me 3 times in a row during one day earlier this week. It's just funny. I just wanted to let you guys know about that story. The comp is solid, but you do need good starts for it, which I had in my games, but it just didn't work out those times. I'd even had Trade Sector, which is like one of the best reroll augments, and yeah, I still could not find any Yones in my shop. But the reason why this comp is good is because you could flex into Mirage or the Guardian version, and I personally like the Mirage version more because I'm really like a Daeja player right now, and having the option to reroll Yone while still going for all the Mirage units gives me like another out, which is really nice for me. You do have to pay attention to which Mirage variation it is. It does need to be the good one. Refer to the old Mirage chart from before in order to find out if it's a good one for Yone, but like you want to avoid the ones that aren't good for melee DPS carries. Reroll for Yone 3 at level 6. You could also pick up Taric, Braum, Leona, and Thresh. If you don't get like these guys to 3-star, you could always drop them to play other stuff. You could play warriors or just random high cost units. Items for him really depends on what you get. If you get Duelist, you don't need Rageblade as much. If not, like Rageblade is very important. Quicksilver, good for all melee carries. And then like stacking items are just great because he takes a while to ramp up. Onto the next build, we have Kayn Assassin Reroll, another 2-cost reroll. I like to position my tanks up front because you want their backline to stay in place. A lot of times when you play Assassin, you want their backline to run up, but that's not the case on these guys. Because Kayn attacks in a line, so imagine the Kayn's here on the enemy's team, he will shoot in a line like this and hit 3 people, whereas if they walk up, he'll only hit 1 person. So that's why I like having my tanks in the front line. Cringe Heart on Qiyana, really good, and then IEs on the other Talon and Pike, really solid, because again, Talon doesn't need much, and Pike, legendary unit, you want to itemize them. IE, if you guys haven't realized yet, is the best item by far, not even close, on Assassins. Next up, we have Jade Plus carry. This one is Washio U carry plus someone else. Sometimes it's Xayah, but all the Xayahs are being taken right now, so I don't even want to put Xayah on this composition list because everyone's taking Xayah. So if you're playing Xayah, don't go Jade, go for the other guild or Ragewing build instead. So sometimes you could do like Anivia carry. It's not as good as anything else, that's why it's in the B tier, but it's still a pretty solid comp to maybe transition or pivot into something else later on. Talon Assassin Guild, this is focused on Talon carry. Pretty solid. I personally like this build a lot. It's probably like my favorite build, even though it's not very good right now, but hopefully once they fix Talon in the next patch, he's going to be a lot better. There's like a small bug with him right now. He's still solid, but he's just not as good as he could be. Ryze, maybe Mage Ryze is a little better right now. I feel like this comp has a lot of potential though, because not many people go for Ryze, so if you do get a lot of Ryzes, you could potentially re-roll for him and get a very solid team for free. But that is pretty much most of the stuff we have here. C tier we're going to ignore. Going back up to the summary, I really want you guys to try out Shapeshifter Nidalee and try the Hyper Roll version at stage 3-1. I feel like that is super duper duper strong and very consistent, and if you're not playing against other professional players, there's not much deviation from the power level of it. You either hit Nidalee 3 at 3-1 or you don't, and you just cruise control from there all the way up into a top 4, top 3, or top 2. You're not going to win much, so if you like only play to win, it's not the comp for you, but like in order to climb, you don't need to win, contrary to like some folks' tales, you know? But yeah, Xayah, best 4-cost, Olaf, Assassin, Broken. It's probably the Exodia of this patch. And then a lot of options in the A tier. You know, as much as I like tease the developers on like needing to fix things and stuff, what I really like about this set so far is that you guys have so many different comps to choose from. It's actually crazy. And the power levels are actually pretty close together. There hasn't really been one that's like super duper OP apart from the Nami build, but even after the huge nerfs to it, this Nami build is still in like low A tier, which I think is awesome. But that's going to be it for me today. Leave a comment down below if you guys have any questions on anything you've heard so far. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what comps are your favorites so far or which one you've had a lot of success with, and I will see you all later. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe, and of course smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.